Hey there, readers, writers, and friends. Story Serpent here, and today we're talking about Ash's Cabin by Jen Wang. In fact, we're going to keep talking about Jen Wang because this was one of Common Sense Media's best books of 2024. So I thought it was going to be great. It was published in 2024 by First Second Books, which is the graphic novel imprint of Roaring Press Books, which is owned by some media group that starts with an H and I can never pronounce it, but I have noticed a trend with this publisher. But before we get into all that, today's random words are like, share, subscribe, Bellicose. So, as I said, I picked this up because it was one of Common Sense Media's best books of the year, and I figured, Common Sense Media, where they tell you what age range is actually appropriate and give you all the deets about what's inside. Well, if Common Sense Media is saying it's one of the best books of 2024, it's got to be one of the best books of 2024 until you realize that Ash's name was not originally Ash. But they won't tell you what Ash's original name is because that would be dead naming. From the first pages, we're in a trans story, which none of the blurb, none of the media, none of the description around it says anything about that. If you are looking this book up on Amazon, you have to go down into the comments to find anybody talking about what is really in here. And while I really like Jen Wang's illustration style, I mean, in terms of what's working, Jen Wang knows how to draw. Her illustrations are absolutely beautiful. This sort of watercolor with the line work over it throughout the book is absolutely gorgeous. But it's really difficult for me to root for Ash when Ash lies to her parents in order to run away into the middle of the woods, thinking that because she's read some books and she's, earned some money to buy some equipment so that, she can rough it out there on her own, just like her grandpa did, because nobody understands her. Like, girl, you're a teenager. Every teenager feels like they're not being totally understood. Does that mean you should lie to your parents so you can disappear into the middle of nowhere? No, it does not. Not only is she lying to her parents when she totally disappears, she lies to her cousin, and she uses her cousin in order to go out into the woods where she wants to be. And in the end, yeah, Ash suffers some consequences while she's out in the woods because she accidentally eats some poison berries. And it's so hard because if it wasn't for the trans thing, I would say most of this story is actually really interesting because Ash does suffer some pretty serious consequences along the way. Ash ends up getting really sick because they don't prepare something properly, or I think it was they ate it out of season. It wasn't ripe yet. Ash has her dog with her, and her dog ends up getting super duper hurt defending her from a bear, and so she tries to take the dog back to civilization without getting caught herself, which again, it's kind of a scammy move at that point. Like, if your dog needs help, you got to make sure they get to a clinic, not just that you put your injured dog by the side of the road where it's more likely to get hit, you moron. Like, I don't even think Ash is that smart. We're meant to think that Ash is clever, but apparently Ash can't be bothered to even totally read the books that she took with her. She cannot be bothered to make sure that her dog gets help. She just leaves her dog by the side of the highway, hoping that someone will see the dog. And then stays in the forest despite the fact that there is a massive forest fire that eventually forces her back to civilization. So she ends up going back home anyway. Here's the craziest bit. Her cousin should be furious because her cousin, there's no way there weren't massive consequences because her cousin was supposed to be watching her. Her cousin was supposed to be with her throughout the summer because she wanted to stay up at the cabin with her cousin, right? Well, her cousin's like, I'm going off to a party with my friends. You can hang by yourself, right? And that's when Ash disappears. And they have no reason to believe that Ash wasn't kidnapped. So they go looking for Ash in the woods. There are choppers. There are, police teams searching for Ash. Continues to hide from them. But if you're her cousin, do you not at least have your driving privileges revoked for like a year? Because your vulnerable teenage cousin went missing on your watch because you went to a party? If you are Ash's cousin, do you speak to Ash, like, ever again? Do you trust Ash with anything ever again? I certainly don't. Like, choices have consequences, people. And while the wilderness will deal out consequences kind of willy-nilly and at random, human beings tend to deal consequences at each other based on our actions. Moreover, Ash doesn't seem to be grounded. Ash doesn't seem to be in any kind of trouble. They just find Ash a different counselor who's asking what Ash's preferred pronouns are. See, that's all Ash really needed, was someone to ask about pronouns. The ending of this book is absolutely absurd. At the very least, a teenager who runs away, who is experiencing gender dysphoria, who refused to really participate in counseling before, would not be home at Thanksgiving the following year. She would be in an institution. She would be in a facility. She would be in some kind of group home where she is getting like 24-hour round-the-clock care because she has demonstrated that she is a danger to herself. She is a danger to her dog. She is a liar. She's not going to tell you the truth. We don't have any evidence that she will participate in counseling. We have no idea whether or not she has taken medication, whether she will take medication. And then, of course, following all of that, she gets to do more activism. Because that's what's going to solve your problems if you're an angsty teenager, is just more activism. And I read this book and I said, well, common sense media is captured. So I don't know who you're trusting with telling you what is and is not in books, but when common sense media, which let's face it, they're based out of San Francisco. It was only a matter of time. If you're thinking that you can trust their recommendations, you're going to need to think again, because this is wholly insidious up one side and down the other. The crazy thing is that Stargazing, a middle grade by Jen Wang, is delightful and is also published by First Second Books. But The Prince and the Dressmaker, because the prince likes to dress in drag and doesn't want anybody to know. But don't worry about it, because the king and his soldiers end up dressing in drag by the end, and it saves the kingdom and everybody's fine. Also by First Second publishers. Also by Jen Wang. I don't... Apparently, if you are in online gaming spaces, you can affect change in China. Here's the thing. If it's got Jen Wang's name on it, and it's not a middle grade, I wouldn't trust it. I wouldn't pick it up. I probably won't pick up any of her YA stuff ever again, because we know who she is, which is unfortunate, because her middle grade, Stargazing, is one I bought for my daughter years ago, which I forgot and picked up at the library, and as soon as I brought it home, because I knew it looked familiar, my daughter's like, oh yeah, you got me that one. I'm like, yeah, I did. I got you that one. Because it's good. It's interesting. It's about the conflict of what it means to be Asian living in a westernized country, and what does it mean to be yourself, but also have friends who are struggling with very serious kind of illnesses, and how do you bridge the gap that tends to come up when you're from very different classes, when you're meeting people who are different religions than you are. Like, how do you handle meeting different people and integrating that with how you see yourself? It's a wonderful story. So, Stargazing by Jen Wang, a middle grade, excellent. Anything YA by Jen Wang, out to lunch. Anyway, that's all the Story Serpent's got for you today. If you've got something specific you want to see the Story Serpent take on, feel free to put it in the comments. Till next time, read on, write on, stay sharp.